Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to GoldwingDocs. This is episode 5. You got questions, we got answers. Coming up next. Well, it's a cold and miserable winter day here in Ohio. You can see if I open the garage up and look outside, it's not so pleasant out there. Lots of snow, lots of cold. In here, we're working on motorcycles, and apparently so are you, because I got a lot of questions from GoldwingDoc members that they want answered. As usual, I picked 3 of them, and let's go over them now and see if we can answer some questions. Number 1. I see lots of people on GoldwingDocs talking about the starter solenoid. I looked at my starter and I can't find it. Where is the starter solenoid? Okay, well, that is a problem because your bike doesn't have a starter solenoid. Cars have a starter solenoid as part of the starter. So what happens is the starter has a solenoid that engages the splined shaft with the flywheel of the car. So basically, the starter motor has a shaft that only comes out when you actually start it. So you turn the key in your car, it energizes the solenoid, it pushes that shaft out so it engages the flywheel of your engine. And as soon as that comes out, it engages some electrical contacts which allows current to flow to the starter. That cranks the engine. The idea behind that is that the starter can't start spinning until it's already engaged with the flywheel on the engine, so that the flywheel doesn't get broken from a spinning shaft getting shoved into it. Motorcycles work differently, as you may have guessed. There is a starter, but it is permanently engaged, kind of, to the engine. Instead of a shaft that comes out and engages a flywheel, on our Goldwings, there's a starter with a chain that goes to a sprag clutch. And a sprag clutch is a special type of clutch that only transmits power in one direction. So what happens is when you hit that starter button, the starter motor turns that sprag clutch, which cranks the engine. As soon as the engine starts going faster than the starter is, and so the sprag clutch lets go. That's the reason why you can actually crank the engine on your motorcycle while the engine's running, without doing any damage. You would never do that to a car, because on a car, if you engage the starter while the engine's already running, what happens is it shoves that shaft into the flywheel that's already turning, and you damage either the flywheel or the starter itself. So where's the solenoid? Well, on the motorcycle, you obviously have to have a switch that turns the starter on, and you know you have the starter switch here, but that's not the one that actually turns the starter on, because the starter is the thing that draws more current than anything else on your bike. So you could not fit that much current through this tiny little switch. Instead, that switch switches a relay. The relay is just a magnet with a bigger switch. So when you press this button, it energizes an electromagnet, which then closes the big switch, and that energizes the starter motor. So what you have is a relay, a starter relay. Now on the 1500, you actually have 2 of them. The starter switch engages the first one, which engages the second one, which powers the starter motor. Now where those relays are depends on the motorcycle you have, but I can tell you on the 1500, it's underneath the right side cover. So if we have a look, we can actually see one of the starter relays is right up here, underneath all these wires here, and it's connected directly to the battery. The second one is actually down inside here, and to get to it, you actually have to pull this apart here. Now the author of this question didn't actually mention which model Goldwing you have, so if you go onto the GoldwingDocs forum, go into the appropriate section for your bike. If you have an 1100, post in the 1100 section and ask somebody, where is the starter relay located in my bike? Someone will definitely help, might even be me. We'll post a picture and help you find where that starter relay is. Now starter relays do fail. They don't last forever, and the reason for that is because they have electrical contacts that are switching a large amount of current. So you get a spark in there, and that spark eventually erodes away the contacts. And the way you usually know that is because they will weld themselves shut. And when that happens, the starter motor will continue to run even after you've let go of the button. So if you push the starter and the engine starts and the starter's still running, that's probably what your problem is. Sometimes you might not even know that until you try to turn the bike off and you hear it's still cranking, the starter's still cranking. Sometimes you might not know until you're riding, you started the bike, you went off on a ride, and you think everything's fine, and then you realize, oh, wait a second, I've got a battery problem, or my voltage is down, or the bike just dies because the battery's dead, and that's because it's been cranking the starter the whole time you're riding. How do you fix that if you're on the road? Well, take a screwdriver, just give a a tap to the relay. That generally will jog the contacts apart and stop the starter from cranking. That's not a fix, that's a band-aid. So if you're stuck somewhere and the engine is cranking and you don't know what to do about it, take your starter relay, give it a whack with something hard. That'll generally stop it. Then once you actually get home, you can swap it out for a new one. All right, question 2. My motorcycle is too tall and/or my legs are too short. Is there any way I can make it shorter? All right, well, I have a lot of experience with this. Not that my legs are short, my legs are actually very long, but I do have experience with bikes that are too tall and altering them. So there's 2 options that you have. One is lowering the bike itself, and the other is lowering the seat. So let's talk about lowering the bike itself. Typically that's done with shocks. Now I have some Hagon shocks here that I actually had custom built. Now Hagon is a really good company in the UK. They make custom shocks. They will make shocks to order, and they're very high quality shocks. So this is a pair of shocks that I had made up for a Pacific Coast. And as you can see, the shocks have a lower and upper eye, and that is the distance that the bike is going to sit when it's resting. Now there is going to be a little bit of sag. Once you put some weight on it, the spring compresses just a little bit. So what you're going to do is get a set of shocks made that are just a little bit shorter. This is not the type of thing that I'm typically going to say you should do yourself, because there's a lot that goes into designing shocks and suspension for bikes. You don't want it too short. You want to adjust the spring rate to compensate for the size and weight of the bike and what you're going to be carrying. There is a minimum and maximum height that you want between the eyes, because if it's too little, you're going to end up bottoming out and hitting the bump stocks on your shocks, which could actually damage your bike or cause you to crash. There's a lot of variables that go into shock design. Probably a little bit more than I can go into here. And it's not just shocks. Now those shocks go on the back of a bike, but you also have suspension on the front of your bike. Now, your front forks have springs in them as well, and that's what supports the weight of the front of the bike. And the length of those springs determines the ride height of the front end of the bike. You definitely do not want to change just the rear shocks or just the front forks, because you end up bike riding like this or bike riding like this. Not only is it uncomfortable to ride, it's unsafe, because on a motorcycle, the front forks come down at an angle, and that angle is very critical to how the front end of the bike operates. The angle of those forks and the way that the wheel is fastened to the forks at the bottom of the forks determines things like caster and trail that are extremely important in making your front end stable. So if you change the angle of the bike, you're actually also changing the angle of the front forks, which changes the trail and the caster of the front wheel. And changing that can get you into really dangerous territory where your front end could end up with a speed wobble that's not recoverable, causing a crash. So yes, you can lower a bike by lowering the front and the back an even amount. Caveats, your ride's gonna suck. You're going to take away some of that soft suspension travel that gives you a nice compliant ride. It's gonna be a much harder ride. Big bumps are gonna jolt right up into your back. Secondly, you reduce ground clearance. That means if you ride over a curb or any kind of bump, you may actually hit the bottom of the bike. And definitely, if you're cornering, things are going to start dragging on the ground a lot earlier than with the OEM shocks at its original manufacturer height. So for those reasons, lowering the bike by lowering the suspension is not ideal. If you have no other option, then that's what you go for. But really, the best way to do it is with the seat itself. The seat has a whole bunch of foam in there. I mean, there's inches of foam. And the most common way that people lower the bikes or actually make the bikes fit them is by taking this cover off, carving some of the foam away, and then putting the cover back on. And the cover just staples in underneath. Typically, they'll use an electric stake carving knife to carve the foam away and then some sandpaper to smooth it. Sometimes you might even be able to get away with just cutting down the width of the seat right at the front here, because if you're short and your legs are on either side of the seat like this, if you're spread wide like this, you might not have enough leg length left to touch the ground. Now, if the seat is cut inwards, you can actually get your legs closer together. It gives you a little bit more height so you can actually get on the bike and ride the bike safely. If you're not comfortable cutting down the seat yourself like that, there are plenty of upholstery, especially motorcycle seat upholsterers that will do that for you. It's really a minor procedure. They might charge you a couple $100 at most. So hopefully that answers your question. And the last question. I'm looking at buying a bike. The buyer says the tires are new, but they don't really look like it. How do I know? Okay, well, this is really easy. Every tire ever manufactured has the date of manufacture molded into the sidewall of the tire. That's the same for motorcycle tires, car tires, bicycle tires. Every tire has that. My snowblower here has a date code molded into the sidewall of its tire. So every tire has it. So all you got to do is look for a 4-digit number molded into the sidewall. Sometimes it'll help to take a flashlight and just shine it along the edge, kind of an oblique angle like this. So if we just look along here, and there it is, 2217. And the format is week, week, year, year. So that means this tire was manufactured in the 22nd week of 2017. So why do we even care about this? Well, tires don't last forever. They start aging not from the day you buy them, but from the date they're manufactured. I've actually bought tires that I had shipped to my house, and when I received them, they were almost 5 years old. I sent them back. You really shouldn't be using tires that are older than 5 years on your motorcycle. I know this one here is getting close to 5 years now, even though it's not used up. After 5 years, especially if the bike has spent a lot of time outdoors or has especially been stored outdoors, the tires will get old and hard. You'll see the sidewalls start to crack. They just aren't as compliant as they used to be when they were brand new. So you definitely don't want to have a bike that has old tires on it. So if they're saying, hey, this bike, I just replaced the tires last year, and you look at it and the tire's date code on there is from 2014, maybe walk away from that deal. All right, that's the 3 questions we have for this episode. I really want to take just a moment to address all the feedback I got on my quitting motorcycling video. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll put a link to it down below. That video got more response than anything I've ever done, and it wasn't the normal kind of, off the hand, one-line response. I got some people that wrote me books about this. People are really passionate. So if you haven't seen that video, and I encourage you to go have a look at it. Also, have a look at the GoldwingDocs forum where the quitting motorcycling topic associated with that video is. It's, again, one of the most active and responsive topics I've ever seen posted there. People are really have some strong opinions about this. About what should be done to combat this. I'm really surprised at how many people said, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. So, and for those of you that are worried, don't worry. GoldwingDocs is not going anywhere. The website, the forum, the GoldwingDocs YouTube channel, none of that is going anywhere. This is all my personal experiences that I'm talking about, so I have no intention of walking away from GoldwingDocs. I had a lot of people write me saying, this is such a valuable resource, please don't quit. So I'm not quitting. I might end up not motorcycling, but we'll see. Again, check out the video and the forum postings and join in the conversation. If you do have some questions for me you want to have answered in a future video, please leave me a comment down below or go on to the GoldwingDocs forum and leave a question there. I picked some out of there as well. We've got some really great questions from a lot of different people, and people seem to really like these question and answer videos, so I'll just keep doing them as long as you keep coming up with questions. If you do like what you saw here, please click like, subscribe, click that little bell down below. It really helps us out when you do. Plus, you get notified whenever we post a new video, and who doesn't want that? And of course, GoldwingDocs forum. Are you a member? Have you registered yet? Have you participated? Why not? What are you waiting for? We've got so many friendly people. We've got a free monthly contest. You get free stuff. All you gotta do is sign up for our free monthly contest. Thanks for watching.